This lesson is a brief introduction to the document object model, or better way to put it probably is a brief reintroduction because it was covered very near the beginning of this course. If you already feel like you have a good familiarity with DOM and with nodes, you can skip this, but you might want to just follow along. I'm going to open up a new Firefox window so that I can show you visually what the DOM looks like. I found it's a much easier way to get your mind around the concept. So I've picked a website. And if I go up to the Tools menu in Firefox, I can go to DOM Inspector. And if you haven't ever looked at the DOM Inspector before, it's well worth your while, especially once you started working with JavaScript. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see it says Document, DOM Nodes. And the node name is Document, that's the document itself, and HTML. And the HTML contains head and body. Over here it says Object DOM Node, but there's other nodes there as well, or other objects that you have access to. We want to look at the JavaScript object. Inside JavaScript, whenever we refer to document.something, this area here over on the right is exactly what we're referring to. If we look at document.refer or document.title, this is it. So you can go in and look at this for any web page that you can get to. And it can be valuable to see what's going on in here, to get a good idea of what is contained inside the document object model. For instance, you can look at all the images here. Well, this one has a length of 0, so there aren't any. But there are a large number of links and a form and link colors and background color and such. But in particular, you can look through the nodes and the document tree structure yourself. For instance, this is, as its document, this is the very top. It does not have a parent node. Then you can look at the child nodes. Child node 0 is the document type. Child node 1 is the HTML element itself. But then if you open up that, you see this is the HTML element. This is everything that is contained inside HTML. And it has child nodes. And it has two children, the head element and the body element. And you can open up the body element and take a look at its children. In this case, it has 3, a text object, a div object, and another text object. And you can see that child nodes dot length is 3. Which tells you that it has 3. And you can follow this on down through the entire object model of the page. So for instance, this div here has 15 objects. So while you may be looking at a complex page and saying, it's hard to believe it only has 3, that's because it may only have 3, but one of those 3 contains many more on its own. This is the way pages are commonly handled inside a browser. But because you're working on JavaScript, you have the ability to modify this tree structure. In this lesson about the document object model and nodes, we'll be covering insert before, replace child, remove child, and append child, among other things. And you can see that these are all functions that you can use on the document object model. But you can also use them on any node, anywhere inside the document. In case you've been wondering where some of the methods that we've been using have come from, or where to get the names of them, it's handy to be able to look around the DOM Inspector in Firefox because you can see where we've got things that we've been covering already, such as inner HTML. And you can see this is what contains everything that's on the entire page because we're looking at inner HTML on the body tag. Here's its ID, and so on and so on. So spend some time looking through the DOM Inspector. Most browsers have something like this. I personally like the one in Firefox. You can also get the Web Developer Toolbar, which will give you even more access. The Web Developer Toolbar is a free download for Firefox. And use that to just wander around and look through the methods and properties and the children of any given element on the page. And you'll end up being much more familiar with not just the particular JavaScript commands that I'm going to be discussing in the upcoming lessons, but how it all works together. Because you cannot think of it as just one giant tree structure. And with JavaScript, you can go in and tweak things to be just the way you'd like it. So let's look at some code now. This lesson In the Getting Started, I talked about the DOM, the Document Object Model, and nodes, and how a web page is seen internally by a browser. Now we're going to put some of that into practice in this exercise that lets us add nodes. This is what our page looks like. We'll be adding text in here, clicking on the page, and it will then show up. So let's switch over to our text editor and do that. Here's our HTML page. For those of you following along with the exercise files, this is Chapter 10, Example 1, Script.html. We have a simple form, a text area field, and a submit button that says add some text to the page. So, as usual, the work's really being done by JavaScript. Here's a skeleton of our script.js file. When the window loads, it's going to call the initAll function, and the initAll function only has a single line. It's document.get elements by tag name, and we're going to pass it the tag name form. And basically, we're looking for the first form on the page. The page only has one form, so we're fine. If we happen to have more than one, this would be careful and only take the first one. On submit equals add node. And that's our add node function. So now we just use the add node function. We need to actually write it. Function add node. We need a new variable called inText. InText is the text that we just typed in. Document.get element by ID text area dot value. And a new variable called var new text, which is document.create text node in text. So this is going to use a built-in JavaScript method, which is part of document, called create text node. We're passing that method, create text node, some text, which is whatever the user entered into the text area on the page. Now we create another variable, var new graph equals document create element. Create element is another built-in JavaScript method, and it's going to create any element, and the element we want to create is a paragraph tag. Then we create a child of new graph by calling the append child method and passing it new text. So we've created a text node, and we've created a paragraph, and then we've made that text node a child of the paragraph. So that paragraph now contains our text. Up next is, as you might guess, actually putting that out on the page. Var, we're going to call it body, equals document.get elements by tag name. Body sub-0. Get elements by tag name takes in the name of a tag and then gets any elements on the page that have that tag. There really should only be one body tag, but on the off chance there's more than one, we don't want to blow up. Instead, we're just going to grab the first because there's always going to be at least one. And we're putting that into the variable docBody. And finally, we say docBody dot append child new graph. In the same exact way that we said stick the new text inside the new paragraph element, we're saying put that new paragraph element into an existing document body. And finally, we return false because we got here by hitting a submit button, and we don't actually want to do anything else. So here's our JavaScript file. Now let's go try it out in our browser. Here is some text. Here is more text. And you can see it just keeps being added onto the page, and it looks like it just came in as if the page loaded this way. But if we reload the page, it all goes away. And if we shift reload the page, even what we entered in the text box goes away. yes, we could have just said document dot get element by ID some new field, which we obviously don't have on the field, dot enter